Hello everyone and welcome to my channel. I am Empress Real 1584, the Good Witch. If this is your first time visiting me, I would like to thank you. While you are here, please like, subscribe, and share my channel. By taking this action, it will help me to grow. Also take a moment to read my About page so that you can have some understanding of who I am. I will never copy another person's work, nor will I copy another person's title. I am authentically me. This work is a part of my bloodline. Thank you for visiting, and I pray that you will return. Please check out my other videos. All are welcome to share his or her story in the comment section below, because your story may be a helpmate to someone else. My channel is a no judgment zone place for healing in some sort of way. If my video does not resonate with you, please do not try to make it fit at all. For anyone else and everyone else that this message does make sense to, take from it what helps you on your journey towards happiness in every area of your life. Please check out my videos only if you know what your placements are. Cross watchers, you are welcome. I am Empress Real 1584, the Good Witch. Let's begin healing together. So, as you know, or some of you may know, I just had a birthday. And I can check it off my bucket list. Let me say, when I was a child, going to the South, where my family is from, I had an aunt that used to tell us different stories from when she was a child. But she wasn't talking to the children. She was talking to other adults. And you know, the children, like myself at the time, we would sit around and ear hustle. We would try to listen, be nosy. And sometimes those stories would scare you. So let's push forward. In my adult age, I was watching the Weather Channel. And they had a segment on about this particular woman. Her name was Julia Brown. And I knew that name from my childhood because my aunt, who is also a seer, a root woman, a worker, a psychic, a healer, whatever you want to call her, she taught us this story growing up about Julia Brown. So when I saw the story about Julia Brown on television, I was glued to the TV. I was like, oh my God, I know this story. So as I was listening to this story, my heart kept beating and beating and beating. And it was like, you have to go and visit the land that she walked on. You have to go to her grave. So never in a million years did I think that I would be able to go. However, I always wanted to go. But getting to her grave, that was different. How? When her grave is in a swamp. So my daughter said, Mom, I want to take you away for your birthday. So my husband said, I was going to take you away also. So I said, let's just all go together. So both of them told me to pick a place. With my husband, to him, anywhere in the world. My daughter, Mommy, just pick something. So I picked to go to New Orleans. However, I didn't even think that I would be able to go to Julia Brown's grave. That's what happens when you don't believe, right? So then my husband, my daughter, and I were walking around, and we walk into this tourist center. So I walk in and I asked the lady, I said, hey, do you know this story? And I'm telling her the story of Julia Brown. And she's like, no, I don't know that story. So she said, go ask the gentleman over there. So I'm talking to this guy. My husband and my daughter are sitting down. I'm explaining the story to the gentleman. And then the lady goes, I know exactly who you're talking about. Go over there and get that brochure. It's yellow and red. So I picked up the brochure. She said, that's where the grave is. So I said, okay. We go back to the room. My husband tells me to call the place that can take us on this swamp adventure to see the grave. So I'm not even sure if my husband booked us to go or not. However, regardless, I'm like, I'm in New Orleans. I'm in voodoo land. I'm in hoodoo land. I am on the land of my ancestors. I am on the land of the ones that did it before me. So I'm just happy for that. So then I leave out of the room. I go downstairs. I come back up, still not knowing if my husband, booked the tour, whatever. He said he was, but I was unsure. I didn't know. However, we went out, we enjoyed ourselves. We had a lot of adventures. And then the next day we go to the swamp. We had already visited a swamp previously. So we go to the swamp. I'm excited. I'm just sitting there quietly, enjoying the nature, enjoying the raccoons, enjoying the alligators or whatever. But my heart was still pumping because I felt like I needed to go there. So the gentleman started telling the story of the swamp. So I'm like, I raised my hand like we're in school. I'm like, what about Julia Brown? He was like, oh, you know about her, huh? Shoot, yes, I do. And I was older than him, so I knew about her since I was a child because my aunt always paid homage to the ones before her. And so she always, made it be known that you have to give back to your ancestors, whether it be through a prayer to them, to their souls. Whatever the case may be, everybody's situation is different, but in my family, we do pray for the ones that have crossed over before us, to keep their spirit safe. All I can do is just sit there patiently waiting. So he takes us by the graves of the people that lived in the same town of Julia Brown. So I'm like, okay, where's her grave? Because the townspeople were buried in a mass grave, and her grave was not buried with them. So I don't know if any of you know the story of Julia Brown. However, let me just give you a little history. She was a seer. She was a healer, mentally and physically. She was a midwife. She was an herbalist. She was a helper and a helpmate to many. People that came into contact with her, she would help when they would ask for her help, whether it was delivering babies, whether it was making medicines because there was no doctor in that town. So being that she knew about the earth, about the flowers, about all the natural remedies that would heal, people would come to her when they were sick so that she would cure their ailments. You had some people that after she would help them, they would turn their noses up at her as if she didn't exist. Let's not forget she was a woman of color. So imagine the town being predominantly white, Caucasian. After this nigger helped them, screw that nigger, right? I'm just going to be real with you. Basically, that's how it went for many generations, right? However, Julia Brown wasn't that type of woman. She just loved helping people. She delivered their babies. She nursed people back to health. She even helped them financially. Even some of those white folks too, she helped them financially. But when they would see her in public, they would act as though she didn't exist. She gets married. Her husband inherits 40 acres. She inherited those 40 acres because he passed away, and being that she was his wife, now the acres were hers. So she stayed there. There's no records of her ever having children. Although I have saw a few YouTubers say, I'm the great-great-granddaughter of Julia Brown. And I'm like, how is that when she didn't have any children? Not unless her husband had children by someone else, and those would be her step-grandchildren. But other than that, she had no children of her own. She inherits this land. People will come from miles and miles around to see her, and she would also travel to different towns to help the people in other towns because there were no doctors. So she was like the doctor, the hoodoo woman, the voodoo woman. She was the doctor. So her life was a little lonely, except for the satisfaction that she got from helping others, kind of like myself. But her life was pretty lonely. Because after she would help people, once again, they would just stab her in the back. But no matter how many swords she took in that back, it never stopped her from wanting to help others anyway. She was known for being a singer. She sung many songs. But this one particular song, people thought that she was cursing the town by singing a song. But she wasn't. All she was saying that when I die, the town would disappear. You know why? It would disappear because if she was the only doctor, if she was the only one delivering babies, if she was the only one healing people through her natural herbs and remedies, if she died and there was no one else to follow behind, of course, people would fall apart. If she was the one lending money to people, and sometimes not even lending, just giving because she was that type of woman, of course, things would crumble. So she sang this song for a few months before she passed. Every day, people would walk by her house and they would listen to her sing this song. They would go talk about her like she's putting a curse on this town, like she's putting voodoo on this town, like she was being some type of monster. But she wasn't a monster when she was delivering those babies, was she? She wasn't a monster when people was coming to her when they were sick. She wasn't a monster when she was traveling for miles and miles to go to other towns when they would call upon her for help, right? So fast forward, she's deceased. People are coming from miles and miles around to come to her funeral. And on this particular day of her funeral, the day of her funeral, a storm brews in. And the whole town was destroyed by water, which is known as swampland now. So many people died, but only 20-something survived that whole ordeal. So they took all the dead and they buried them in a mass grave, bodies on top of bodies. However, her body They didn't bury next to the townspeople because they thought that she cursed the town. But I would rather not be buried next to people who didn't like me either, right? Or who talked about me or stabbed me in my back. So they did not do her a disservice. They actually did her a great service by burying her on her land. And guess what? That mass grave is on her land, that 40 acres. So the gentleman took the tour out, and we rode all through the swamp. Tour's over. I did from afar get to see Julia Brown's grave. I did get to see the mass grave of the townspeople. So when we got off the boat, my husband said, go ask him, the driver of the boat, if he'll take you back out. I said, I ain't going to do that. I'm not going to do that, because the woman with little faith, right? That was me for a moment. And so he was like, just go over there. So he reminded me that nothing beats a failure but a try. So I go over to the guy and I said, how much would you charge me to take me back to Julia Brown's grave, but not from the swamp? I would like to walk on the land. He said, I can get in trouble for this, right? My husband told me not to tell this part, but if I'm going to tell it, let me tell it right. So he said, don't tell anybody. He said, how many of you are there? I said, just myself, my husband, and my daughter. So he said, come on. And he said, it'll be about, well, I'm not even going to tell you the amount here. So we got back on the boat. He took us to the grave. I said, I want to stand on it, because for years I have been called to this grave and I need to stand on it. And he said, I can get you right to it. So I'm looking at all the sticks. I'm looking at all the trees that have fallen down. And I'm like, how is he going to get us close for me to be able to get off this boat? But guess what? He got us close. And I stood next to Julia Brown's grave. You'll see the pictures that I posted. I was able to touch the cross, the original cross that they put in the ground for her. I touched it. I was able to stand on the land that she stood on, where she lived, where she did her work for others to service a community, where she was a helpmate to others. No matter how many people stabbed her in the back, she was still a helpmate to others. And the reason why I stress that, because my husband and I, he was talking about his grandma, and he said to me, my grandmother didn't hold a grudge. He said that. And I sat there for a moment, because many of us, we can hold a grudge, and I am guilty. But he said, my grandmother never held a grudge. And that put me in the mind of Julia Brown and wanting to do this particular video, because she didn't hold a grudge. All the people that stabbed her in the back, she still helped anyway. I am that person. All the people that have stabbed me in the back, I will try to help anyway until I can't. Because as a human being, as a person with a soul, right? Because my heart is just an organ. But a person with a soul, you know how much you can take and how much you cannot. Some people sit around for years and decades for a person to beat them down until they say enough. However, Julia Brown never said enough. She helped until the day she died, till the day she closed her eyes, until the day she crossed over. My husband said his grandmother never held a grudge. That means people could have betrayed her, could have talked about her, could have lied on her. People could have did damaging things to her. However, she never held a grudge. So, my bucket list, I have something checked off. It was because my husband said, go ask the gentleman if he will take you back out. And he did. I stood next to her grave. I touched the original cross. I even said a prayer. The prayer that I respectfully say to all my ancestors, all the loved ones that had crossed over before me. Julia Brown, not that I'm aware of, is not a relative of mine. However, she was one that did it before me. She was one that did it before my aunt. She was one that I had heard stories of since I was a child. And it was something of a dream of mine. And so I'm seeing that dreams do come true. So all I'm saying is that not to give up on something that you desire, because it may not happen tomorrow or next week. It may happen 10 years from now, 20. It'll happen for you if your heart, your soul desires it. And as long as it is with good intention. And my intention was to visit her. Someone that was like me, but that did it before me. So for my birthday, my 50th birthday, right? I got to stand next to Julia Brown's grave. I got to walk on the land that's in the swamp. Many people have tried to go to her land. Many people have tried to walk through the swamp and have been unsuccessful. They say that a lot of men, they run out of there scared, that she doesn't let anyone come near her gravesite, men. My husband stood there with me. And the only reason why you don't see him in the picture was because he took the picture of my daughter and I didn't even think to take a picture. He said, you want a picture? And I'm like, oh yeah. You know, I was just grateful, humble that I was able to stand on the land where she lived, where she walked, where she helped others. And I was able to soak in that energy. So that's what I did for my birthday. I encourage you all to write down a bucket list. Even if you don't want to write it down, keep it right here in that storehouse, right? That memory bank. And you will one day be able to check something off of your bucket list. My bucket list may be different than you guys, right? Because I'm a history buff. I like to know about things that came before me. And the only reason why I'm a history buff is because my older sister that passed away, she would tell me different stories of the past and the reason why she wouldn't go to this place and the reason why she wouldn't go to that place. And now, when I was hardly paying her any attention, now I think back about our many conversations and the teachings that she tried to instill in me, and I'm listening now. I'm paying attention now. And it's crazy that one word or two can jog your memory just like that. So for my birthday, once again, let me repeat, I went to Julia Brown's grave. I walked the land, my 2 feet. And it was all because my husband said, go over there and ask that gentleman if he would take you back over there. And the gentleman said, come on. Nobody else on the boat with us, just us. And I said, listen, I do believe in voodoo. I do believe in hoodoo. I explained to him that it was a part of my bloodline. So I said to him, don't think it's weird when I get off this boat what I'm going to do. Because I did a few things that I'm not going to discuss right here. However, I'll just let that rest right there. And he said, no judgment. And you see, my intro is no judgment. No judgment zone. And so that gentleman said, no judgment. However, he's from New Orleans. He's from the Bayou. So he knows, even if you're not a part of hoodoo, even if you're not a part of voodoo, even if you have no lineage to it, you still know about it. Today, happy birthday to me. I get to check something off my bucket list. If you don't know the story of Julia Brown, look it up. It would be very interesting to the ones that's interested in it and who she is and how she contributed to the lives of many. Don't look at the story of this one song destroyed this area and that she was the cause. No, she was not. She was trying to warn people in her own right. But they didn't pay attention because they were using her. And the reason why those people perished, because those were the people that stabbed her in the back. And guess what? Her funeral was the day of that storm. So guess what? The universe said, you will not suffer. She died at a right old age. She died at an old age, and she died right before the storm, because the universe said, my child, the one that brought no harm to any, you will not suffer in the eye of this storm. However, all the work that you did, all the help that you gave, and no matter how many times you were stabbed in the back, you stayed solid, and you continued to help no matter what. My child, go to sleep. Be at rest, be at peace. And that's what she was able to do. And the day of her funeral, she wasn't tossed out of her casket. Her body was still in that casket, sealed, while many around her perished. So be careful how you treat people. Be careful how you talk to people. Be careful with anything that you do that's not in the greater good of you or others. I am Empress Real 1584, The Good Witch. Please like, subscribe, and share my channel. Thank you.